Minor technical difficulties there, guys. But welcome to this month's MSPs in Conversation. Today, we've got a topic that I'm really interested in, and I'm hoping to learn a few things as we go as well. But strengthening your MSP's employer branding and employee value proposition to help attract and, more importantly, retain IT talent. The feedback that we get regularly from our partner community is that the employee market is a tough one at the moment. So we've asked a couple of experts and from the recruitment, and I'll let them introduce themselves as well. Bradley, who's been on here before as well, they do this very, very well. So we thought we'd pick their brains and see what insights they have for us. But very quickly, as always, a quick introduction to Hosted Network if you don't know who we are already. We are a wholesale cloud and telco provider for Aussie MSPs. We have been in the industry for 20 years. We have been a wholesale provider though for 10 years. And we work with over 170 MSPs across Australia. Only MSPs, we don't work with any retail customers. Everything that we do is for the channel. All right though, guys, I'm gonna get you guys to introduce yourself. So Sean, starting with you.
Hey guys, how are you? My name is Sean Withford. Thanks very much for having me on today. One of the co-founders of a business called Eloquent, and we do a lot of work in marketing, but specifically the employer brand space. And before that, most relevant, was one of the first employees at LinkedIn here. So worked with a lot of companies with them over a lot of period of time on their employer brand talent attraction as well.
Awesome, thanks. And Dean.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I'm the director and founder of a business called West Technology. So we are IT recruiters based in Western Sydney, and I bring about 15 years of, or just ticked over 16 years of white collar recruitment experience in Sydney. So yeah, so technology obviously is the IT arm of West Recruitment.
Cool, awesome. And Bradley.
Yeah,
welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again. CEO of Kaine Mathrick Tech. We're an MSP. Predominantly based out of Melbourne. We're also an MSSP. We've been on a bit of a journey on that cyber track for about 5 years. And so yeah, MSP and MSSP based out of Melbourne, about 70 staff, fairly fast growing. Yeah, sort of, if you haven't heard of us, that's sort of in a nutshell who we are.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. So I'll turn off the slides because we're here to see you guys. So Sean, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay. For the audience on here, what is EVP? What is employee value proposition, and why is it important in your opinion?
Yeah.
And then guys, feel free to weigh in as well.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I think if you got 4 HR people to explain EVP, they'll tell you 5 different explanations. So like, it's one of these things that even the industry disagrees with. I would say that it's 2 things. One half of your EVP is just the employee experience. So what happens inside of your business, what it's like to work there. And then the other half of it is your employer brand. What do other people think it's like to work there, right? So because those 2 things can be different, right? What it's like to work there and what people think as well. So that's EVP in a nutshell. Why it matters is for the internal experience of the business. It's so important in terms of keeping people happy, keeping them productive, keeping them profitable, keeping them successful. For most businesses, like your people is the biggest line item on your P&L. And then same thing from that employer brand, right? Like if you have the ability to get the best people into your business is a competitive advantage, right? So that's why I think it's really important from an external perspective as well. So yeah, that's EVP for me.
Okay. Bradley, why is it important in your MSP and how you use it to attract talent?
Depends on the audience whoever's dialed in today, but I think when when you start out small, you're certainly not thinking about things like this. You go out and transact, and you start to grow, and eventually get to that point where you hire your first employee. Are you thinking about it at that point? Probably not. It gets more and more important, probably over time. I think you'll attract your tribe, and when you're smaller, and you'll naturally sort of have the people will stick around because they like you as an individual. If you're the primary owner, we have the advantage of having 2 owners and 2 very different if you look at the way we work with two very different people, but I think over time it becomes more and more important. I think it's fairly obvious. There's a lot of choice out there. Dean was talking a little bit earlier before we started about a candidate he was talking to that was talking about 4 options, and they're all kind of the same. We've always felt like we're different. I sit in conversations with MSPs and they go, "Oh, we're all the same. It's all commoditized," and I've always disagreed with it. It's not that we think we're special, but I think it gets more and more important to differentiate who you are, what you're about, what you stand for, your core values, all those sorts of things, and then trying to attract the right people that fit your core values. It becomes important because you need to stand out. You need to have people sort of look at you and research and go, "I actually want to work there," because they do have choice. It's the talent pool for in our space is limited, especially when you start to get to senior resources and the like. So I think I think it's fairly obvious. It's important over time to really start to present who you are, what you're about, and then try and attract the people that sit in that, that align to that. So that's probably my addition to that piece.
Yeah, interesting. And I think at the moment in the job market, it is tight. It's competitive, right? So Dean, tell us a little bit about that story. I assume none of the people that this candidate was looking at had an EVP, or did they? And are they getting it wrong?
Well, it was funny. I think it was more of an education process, and I think sort of EVP coming from a recruitment angle is a little bit different, because we work with a lot of different businesses, and I think in the MSP space, it's very easy to say, "Oh, we all do similar things," which really, on a very, very high level, that might be fairly accurate. But from a company standpoint, everybody thinks they're different, or that they can do certain things better, or they know what their strengths are. As a recruiter that partners with a lot of businesses, if I don't know that, it's very hard for me to represent your business to the market and give you a point of differentiation. And I think, EVP wise, it's a really good tool for us to know that we can talk to people about your business and try and get them attracted to your company over others, because it's not just a competition standpoint between talent. Recruiters are competing with themselves. It's just, again, it is a point of difference. I think, in a skill short market, it has become very, very important that you have a good EVP. Otherwise, if you don't really know what's good about working for your business, then, how are we going to promote that to somebody that doesn't know who you are and what you're about? And I think that's something that, good companies are on top of at the moment.
So to me, it sounds like EVP is the equivalent of understanding your, unique selling proposition from a sales point of view. If you're going out to market, selling a product, this is how you attract talent. Okay, so hopefully now we've got a good baseline, and we sort of understand why it's important. We've talked a little bit about attracting, and we'll come back to that in a bit. But from a retention perspective, right? We see it regularly within our industry. I think, everyone on the call has probably had an account manager that has worked at multiple different vendors, or, I see a few people on the call that have swapped staff here and there, even that have gone from my team to others and vice versa. So how does it help you retain talent? Anyone?
Yeah, I'll jump on that quick, because it's this 2 halves. Like, part of your employer value proposition is what's inside of it, right? And so what it's like to work there. And like, we always see there's 3 big things that like make your promise true, or make a really compelling promise. And so if you look at it at the lens from your employees, the first one is just like, I'm growing, right? Like, the person feels like they're growing. And that can be your onboarding, it's training, it's internal mobility, it's learning development, it's all of that stuff, right? Feeling like they're growing. The next is people feeling that they're valued. Yeah. And so for value, that's rewards, it's recognition, it's little touches, it's leadership, it's what you celebrate, it's all of those. And then the next one's like people feeling like their work matters. Yeah. And so am I recognized? Do I see how what I'm doing contributes to the greater good, or to the greater good of the business? So am I a person versus a number? So if you get those 3 things right inside, I'm growing, I'm valued, I matter. Yeah. People will stay longer, but then getting those 3 right is then exactly what becomes your external promise now as well, right? Because you get those 3 things right, and then you've got to go just scream it from the rooftops to the people that you want to hire. So for me, like, getting that right just makes such a big difference on your retention. Like we work with businesses across a lot of different industries, and like I'm working with a construction mining business at the moment, and they go into these big projects that are 5 years, and at about the 3-year mark, all of their teams start leaving. It erodes and then wipes out the whatever margin was there on the product because they've got it on the project. So like keeping people through to the end, it's like makes such a difference just on the profitability of your business.
Profitability is an interesting one, right? I mean, in tech, we often talk to our customers about IT being an enabler, not a cost center. I was actually having a conversation with a partner's customer that we were working with, and they put a dollar value at $70,000 for them to replace and then retrain. I don't know how accurate that is for most businesses, but that's the dollar amount that they came up with. So it's an interesting, and they were about 150 seat staff, organization, but it even if you're smaller, right, it distracts you, when you lose talent, having to rehire, that whole process onboarding, it's a pain.
So just on that, Ben,
yeah,
I mean, just to follow on in terms of the retention piece, I mean, if you have people living and breathing your values and your EVP and your benefits are tied up to your values, the staff will actually promote it for you. So, I mean, you mentioned sort of screaming from the rooftops. If people really enjoy working there and you introduce someone that's maybe entertaining coming to your business, you don't have to sell to them. I think the people that work there will go, oh, it's great here. We knock off at 12 on Fridays, have lunch, like whatever the benefits or what makes your place great, people will really buy into that. And what works best is if the people in the organisation are the ones that spruik it, not so much the management. It's a lot more believable and buyable for people that sort of interact with your company, and your customers will feel that too. So from a retention standpoint, they'll know that you guys are good operators.
So it sounds like it's deeper than a ping pong table, right? So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Ping pong tables are fun. I think everybody wants one of those. It was funny in recruitment. There was I don't know if you remember this, Sean. There was a company that had their staff. I think the director, got up and complained about people using the ping pong table too much, and he wrote an internal email that was leaked, and it went pretty viral. But it ended up becoming a bit of a running joke that the recruiters are all hanging around the ping pong table instead of actually doing work. But that's not true.
I can't talk for other agencies. I could say, our one's folded up most of the time, but no, look, we have fun when we need to. But in all seriousness, as I said, like from an EVP standpoint, if companies say, oh, we have a ping pong table and all that, that might be okay. But I think it goes far beyond that and a lot more in depth in terms of, health and well-being, financial, work-life balance. I think COVID's taught us everything. It's flipped everything on its head now. So I think flexibility and balance is a huge driver. So it's not one thing, and it's not just fun. It's not having a beer fridge. It's a lot of different things that sort of compel. But again, it has to really tie into what your values are as a business.
Totally. And I'm going to ask you a question, Brad, but imagine you see that. We used to see stuff like the number one, this is back at LinkedIn, one of the number one reasons that sales managers missed their quota or missed their number for the year was open headcount. Yeah. So anytime, and I'm interested if this is true in any of your businesses, right? Like generally speaking, when teams were missing budgets, it was because the sales team, they weren't there, right? There was a headcount based on a number of heads. Someone was gone. Now you've got this 6-month ramp on this new person that takes you 2 months to find. Like the year's gone just out of like this replacement of headcount. And so you think about like the cost of retention, like you can see it just in your sales team before you look anywhere else, right? Like you find that like Brad, do you see that inside of your business? Or?
He doesn't lose anyone.
No, that's not true. On the sales side, particularly, or just in general, I mean, we sort of going to jump in earlier, but you always got to start with hiring the right people. I mean, we've all made heaps of mistakes in the past with hiring the wrong people or settling for something. I think they're going to be okay, and in something in your gut says they're not. You got to really hire that. You got to be really clear about what you want and the questions you ask and how you align, how you measure the people that you're interviewing. That's the first thing, right? You got to, if you hire the right people, you're already miles ahead. Yes, sales targets. We can go on. I can go on a rabbit hole on sales targets and retention. We're at a point now in our company where account managers are one of the most critical parts of our sales function. Is that retention of clients, keeping our agreements in compliance. There's a whole plethora of things we do to make sure that we're really sticky with our clients and making sure they follow those. That's become one of our most critical sales roles, not new business, business development type roles. We've always had a business development's been a bit on and off for us, but we've been principal-led selling for a long time, and we still sort of are. So it's a tough one to answer. But I think if you're looking at back to retention, there's three basic things we do to start with, which I'd call the cake. There's hiring by your core values, hiring and potentially firing, but not saying that but hiring on it, measuring on it. So we do monthly one-on-ones, we do quarterly conversations, we do yearly reviews, and we wrap them around those things. And we do a state of the company every quarter. So we explain, we use EOS as a framework, but we want to make sure everyone understands what we're doing and we're all rowing in the same direction. And it's those feedback loops that we have with the assessment and the yearly reviews. They're kind of the cake, and then it's all the icing bits are kind of they're not irrelevant, but ping pong tables, beer fridges. There's lots of things you can do, but if you don't get just the basic fundamentals right, which I call the cake, they're the things you can do that are really easy. They're not easy, but if you do them right, then the rest kind of sort of flows. So we kind of don't have a lot of the icing bits, because some of them are relevant. We ask the team, they go, not even doesn't interest me. So got to get those three fundamentals right, I think, at the start.
I think, Brad, what you said, mate, is absolutely bang on. I think you touched on that about engaging the team. A lot of people make the mistake that we see, especially in smaller companies, that the owners or directors that are still pretty hands-on will sit there and go, this is what we're about and these are the benefits. And you might have a room full of people sitting there and you haven't even asked them what they like, or what is it about our business? Why do you like working here? You've been here for a long time. What is it? And really pick their brains. If a company's a little bit larger, you might want to do something through like an anonymous survey, because people might be a little bit too gun shy to tell you what they really think or what they like. But I think, just while there's some really good things in why you are here and why you stay, I think there's just as much gold, if not more, in what don't you like or what don't we do well, because it might be something you're aware of that you just don't tackle, or something you think that, oh, look, I know, but it doesn't affect the team. But realistically, it might just be an elephant in the room, that, it might be the tools, resources you've got to do your job, less about, what you do as a team socially, or office politics. It could be all these different things that you may or may not want to sort of address. But if you really are serious about attracting people to your business, you have to be across that. So
yeah.
And you jumped right into my next question, which was great. So thank you. So we've tackled sort of what it is and the importance of it. But where do you start? You mentioned a survey. Is that a good spot to start? Run us through how you see your customers implementing a good EVP strategy.
I think it's something that's very considered. Do you know what I mean? It's not something that people rush or just try and copy off other businesses. I think what you really need to do is understand what you're about as a business, what you are, what your core values are. Really put a stake in the ground and say, well, look, this is what we do really well, and this is what we're good at, and this is what people need to know about us. And I think your EVP needs to work off attracting the people that resonate with your values. So by turning and saying, look, I want to offer all these fantastic benefits, it's going to cost you an absolute fortune. You might be getting people in for the wrong reasons that maybe aren't going to suit your business. So I think it has to be true to yourself. And I think, even making decisions that align to your values. So the EVP and your core values as a business, they're not too dissimilar. I think they sort of, they're very closely, aligned. The fact that if you know what your values are, then the EVP and know what your team like, then you can build an EVP that's going to be very, very, useful for your organisation. And you are going to make decisions, business decisions, hiring decisions, firing decisions, and even to the point where it does come into day-to-day conversations in the office. It's like, you might have a mantra that people go, well, I've heard of some really good ones like, done is better than perfect. I think he's on the wall at Facebook. And some organizations might sort of, go, oh, I don't really like that. But, is it done or is it perfect? Like, we know which one we prefer and that sort of thing. So there is that level that people can buy into and get behind if they know what they are and the business is very clear about it and it's lived.
Yeah. I entirely agree with Dean. And we do this stuff, right? And so step one is always you get leadership together, and it's what is it, why is it, what's our promise, and you do that first, but you don't stop there, right? So then you've got to go interview people inside of the business, and you go ask them, and that gives you color, and you try to get range of different departments and teams and offices and types, because their experiences will be different as well. Then typically it's like all staff survey, and that gives you good data and shows you where your blind points are. And then you take all of the bits that are great about the business, and then that's what you go take to market, and start amplifying to build it. Like, and in fact, and Dean started saying like, your people are your best advocates. Like, and I agree, but like, put them on video and then show it to like the right 5,000 people, right? So for me, like, take your employees, turn them into advocates, and then start to build that externally as well. But like, Dean was bang on, like, leadership team, values, mission, what do we hear? What do we talk about? And also you want to future-proof your EVP as well. Like, because it's what are we now, but what do we want to be in 3 years, or what do we need to be in 3 years? But also, and a big mistake people make is trying to make something that's not true, right? So, because if you have, our EVP is one thing and the experience of working here is another, like, it's a nightmare. Like, it's because it's churn cost, right? You talked about the 70 grand cost per head. Like, you're making that worse, that replacement cost, if there's a disconnect between the truth and the reality. So you got to, like, you might have to polish some stuff internally and fix it, but mostly it's finding out what people already love and amplifying it. It's not trying to change it. And like, absolutely not ping pong tables, right? Like, and we interview people. Like, today I have interviewed 3 people from different companies about their like experience working in that business, and no one ever talks about the benefits, right? Like, they just don't. No one mentions the ping pong table. It's always the interconnections within the people. So doing better jobs of the connections between the people is so crucial. And then the number one, or 2 gripes, the number 1, number 2 gripes that people will have about a business, it's internal communication. So how well do I know what's happening and why decisions are made, and do I feel a part of things? That's always the problem that
The
comes
human
out.
element.
Yeah. It's like, and then number 2 is feeling unvalued, right? And usually that's part of number 1, because I didn't know how I fit in. So it's like, the answer is never a ping pong table. Nice. Like, and the human element can be the get together and the Christmas party and all of those things, but they don't have to be expensive, right? I think people hear EVP and they're like, 4 days work from home and office dogs and, free gyms. And that's not it. That's not actually what people are talking about when you interview them. It's connection and meaning and people. Like, and since we're working remotely more than ever, like, I think that's gone up.
Interesting. And, we've talked about culture a lot of times on these MSPs in Conversation, and we often make the joke that it's sort of not a ping pong table. And it does sound like EVP is in a way, the uniqueness of your organization. It's the who you are. Yeah. Bradley, in your company, at what size did you start to go, oh, hang on, we need to actually start focusing on this?
Yeah, look, we I can tell you the year, but I have to go back and look at the figures and remember how many staff we had. But
Gut feel.
I reckon we're around 20 staff, maybe. It was in 2019, so we'd never spent a cent on marketing. There was no focus on it at all. It was all about finding leads through our networks, referrals, all that sort of stuff, organic growth, good at selling, good at converting, good at retaining clients. But in 2019, I decided that I was going to start that journey, and I was researching and educating myself on it as much as I could. But we sort of decided I decided to start really late 2019, and the brief I gave to marketing was, we really want to make sure that what our brand says, what our digital platforms say, is all congruent with who we are. I just wanted it to be uniquely us. So like every when you start these journeys, the marketing team will go out and look at all your competitors, and they go, tell me who are all the companies that you know are, who you come up against. And they come out with all this, information around the color schemes and the wording, and it was so alike, it was ridiculous. I was like, there's so much uniformity around the blue colors they used and the words they were saying, and so we said we obviously don't want to be like everyone else. We want to be like us. There were stakeholder interviews that were done with a lot of clients, why did you pick KMT? Why did you stay with them? Our company was called KMT Group. It was Scott and my business partner and I just created a name in the end. It was, just started transacting. And then, we always, the K and the M were our surnames. We always said it's not about us. But a lot of clients said, hey, we met Brad or I met Scott, and I know that I can always call them. So that's where one of the things that came back in was our names. Kaine Mathrick Tech was brought it back in, and we sort of thought that was a bit strange, but that's what marketing and sort of came back with. And there was a lot of stuff that, and then there was also stakeholder interviews with all the team as well, to sort of understand. I'm going into branding sort of rabbit hole here, but and I'll bring it back to EVP. But we had a lot of help, a lot of exciting, and the stakeholder interviews helped a lot to sort of get to the why. Because if you asked me before that, I would have said the reason why we are growing, why our team stay with us, why we're fast growing, it creates opportunities. They're all relevant, but what we found was the human element was a big part of it. A lot of the words that our clients saying, like, we feel like they're our people. We feel like they're in our office. They're our IT team. And that's where all the, if you look at the brand, it's our people, your people. There's a lot of stuff that came through just exactly what the natural language of the clients were saying. The one thing that the marketing did well was sort of surmise it into where the human face of tech, and that was something that sort of was born off quite a creative marketing thing. And we've found that we've seen a lot now, a lot of MSPs with human in their wording, and not saying that they're all copying us, but there's a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of that. I would say you've got to be careful to make sure it's really what you're about and congruent with who you are. So that journey started about 2019. We then did a bunch of work with consultants to work on the core values, because we had a mission, but we didn't really have a set of core values in the company. And I never saw the point in creating them just for the sake of creating something and saying, here's what we're going to do. So the team, we end up with our 3 core values. And it's funny, like you get clients go, they're calling us out based on our core values. We get new recruits coming and going, oh my God, it's real. It's something that everyone lives and breathes by. And so it's kind of one of those things that it takes time. If I go back and look at all the P&L and know it's what we spent on it, I wouldn't have signed off on it in 2019. I would have gone, nah. It does cost, if you're going to do it right, it does cost a lot of money our website's constantly evolving, because it's the SEO and all the other stuff we're doing. I know that's another whole kettle of fish. But it started in 2019 because we decided we had the time to focus on it. We wanted to have that digital representation of who we are, and that's just evolved over time. I don't really own the culture; the team do. And it looks after itself.
Good quote.
We review it every quarter as a leadership team, and we double check the VTO. That we follow EOS as a framework, but we always look at, is it still relevant? Yes, it is. Are we going to change anything in there? There's context behind every one of those core values, but hope that.
You've mentioned EOS a couple of times, and we've got a comment here from Claire that they've found the EOS framework to be instrumental in helping communicate that and understand who they are. We have within Hosted Network as well, we run EOS like many MSPs do, and it really has helped us understand that. How staying with you, Bradley, did you find that was tied to EOS, that sort of journey into EVP? Did EOS come first, or? We'd started
that journey beforehand, but I was at an event 2018, and I wasn't quite the person, but a lot of MSPs know him. But we met for the first time and gave me a book called Traction. I read it, thought that was interesting, but didn't do anything with it. But then when I joined, I was in Evolve. We were talking about that before. It's peer groups for IT companies. I was in that for a while, and a lot of people talking about it in there, but so we implemented EOS after, and that was bringing a leadership team along for the journey and getting them ready for it, and us as an organisation being ready for it. But that's been we love it. I mean, it gets you all rowing in the same direction. It makes it very clear. It helped me articulate my vision too, because when I was asked, it's quite challenging sometimes when you sort of, go, well, we're getting to 100 million, and that's, 20 years. I had my view of where we're going, and it's still part of it, but certainly helps you, the leader, delegate and elevate and all those things. but yeah, the whole company runs on EOS now, and it's a great framework. But there's lots of other methodologies out there you can use.
Yeah, there is. We've actually, I assume this is who you're talking about, but Dan Williams, we had have an MSPs In Conversation. We had Dan on talking about EOS. If you're interested, we've sidetracked a little bit, but so getting back to EVP at its core, Dean, from a recruitment perspective, how do you find it differentiates from a helping position one MSP versus another, both from a candidate, attracting a candidate? Going back to that example you said before, you had one candidate, they had 4 different job offers, and they were like, yeah, they're all the same, whichever one.
Yeah.
How do you stand out in a competitive in that sense?
And I think as a recruiter, we're a natural extension of an organisation because we are representing that business. We don't sit there 8-9 hours a day. So for us, if someone says, "Oh, what do they like?" or "What do they do at lunch?" I'm like, "I can't tell you. That's not what we do." But what we do want to get a flavour for is how they operate as a business. And we are in a pretty like a privileged position where we can go into a lot of different companies, and the things that we see that you might not be susceptible to. And that's why I guess I love coming on site and meeting people in person, because you learn so much more about an organisation. And I think sort of going back to one of your earlier sort of sessions I think you did on how to attract or how to build great teams, you're talking about recruiters being very, and look, we don't have a great name in the MSP space because not a lot of them get it right. And recruiters really, they are here and now and not, if the relationship's transactional, then that's not really where recruiters want to be. They want to understand your business well enough that when they see somebody, they go, they're going to fit this organisation really well, and here's why. And we can tell them why and tell candidates, and hopefully that's enough, because I think from a candidate perspective, they want to know, are they going to fit in? Is the role going to be fulfilling for them, like in terms of their growth and career trajectory, but also too culturally, what do they like to work with? And if you do have an old website or you don't really have any presence out there that people can research prior to coming in, they can't form an opinion as to what it's like to work there. And I think that works against you. But an EVP, it is, I know sort of Bradley mentioned about, the marketing spend on putting something together, and it is an investment. And I think as long as it's true to what you're trying to achieve and what you're about, you get to the end of it and you say, okay, yeah, it was expensive, whether it's a rebrand or videos or things like that. There's things you can put out into the universe that people can find that will give them a handle as to who you are and what you're about as a business, and the human side of that and what you like to work there is over flashy logos or photos that don't really tell you much about an organisation. People are more into, okay, what are these people like? Putting videos up from owners and the way they talk, people resonate with that. When they meet you, they feel like they've actually, if you have an online presence, they feel like they've actually met you before. You've got that level of familiarity, and it's a very, very powerful thing that you can't really measure. And I think Sean's probably a lot more across that with his marketing background. But from a recruitment standpoint, that sort of thing is vital to help us sort of put your business ahead of others. And again, for people to have the attitude, oh, well, I'll go to the highest bidder, or it's 4 people, four companies that are almost identical. Well, they're not identical. They've got different stories. They've got different DNA and fingerprints. If you haven't asked that level of question, I don't know if that's the onus is on the candidate, or if the business hasn't done a good job of, really putting that out there and as a business, this is what we're about. Put your stake in the ground. If we're for you, that's fantastic. You'll come here, you do well. If not, then, see you around the traps sometime.
I think you're right there. You got to, you definitely want to be very clear with the candidates as an MSP, or a business owner, about what you're about, what you expect. If you're a high performance culture, which we say we are, we do talk in detail about the way we work and expectations and the core values. And, because if someone says, oh, that sounds like it's a little bit too full on, and generally the people that we attract want that high growth, they want that career progression, they want those things, but we make it very clear and explain it. And I reckon, sometimes you miss out on candidates because they're already down the track with someone else, or sometimes the candidates are, I've got another offer at this, and we go, well, take it. So I think you've got to be I think it's, even in that candidate's experience, you need to be purposeful about how you're interviewing and explaining, as much as understanding what they're about, but also explaining what your company's about and making sure they align to it. So I think maybe those 4 companies that had sort of failed in that regard, maybe not really explaining why would you come and work for us and differentiating.
Yep. Or the processes. recruitment processes can be rushed because they think, oh, this person's active, we need to get them in quickly and not run a full process or not spend as much time with them as I can because I don't have the time. And one thing I did want to mention is it's not just MSPs that you're competing with. You're competing with external companies as well. Everybody's after tech talent. It's not just the MSP.
Yeah.
But why I think it's so important for MSPs is because that's your product. You don't have shelves with tins on them. Like the people are your product, and if you get a really good one, they'll make you money, and if you get a really bad one, they'll cost you money. And I don't think that's sort of discussed enough. It's like, oh, we just need bums on seats. The wrong bums will be more expensive than you just even having the chairs. So for us, I think the MSP as an industry could do a lot better at selling the benefits of joining it. And for me, so prior to IT recruitment, I did accounting recruitment. And in accounting terms, you've got the big four accounting firms, your PwC, your Deloitte, your EY. Those organisations have really, really structured ways of headhunting people from university that are high achievers, bringing them through their system or training them as auditors. But very, very few of them stay. They always leave. But when they leave really, really well trained, and 3 or 4 years in an audit environment is the equivalent of 10 years on the client side. And I think MSPs are exactly the same because they have to know a lot of different tech stacks. You have to pick up the phone and solve problems very, very quickly. No 2 days are the same. There's really good things that will round you off, especially if you're early on in your career. You want to be highly skilled. You want to be, especially the techie guys, they love more tech stuff. You want to be exposed to the cutting edge or bleeding edge tech. MSP generally get exposure to that quicker than companies that may be thinking about it or years away from rolling something out. So there's all these benefits that we don't really sort of promote because it just is what it is. And I think, as an organisation,
it sounds like you've promoted a few MSPs, Dean.
Fair to say,
And I think there's a few people on this call that have made the mistake. I certainly have of hiring from enterprise and it just not working for that very reason, right? It's a different game. They think differently. Meryl, our marketing manager, has actually just made a comment in the chat as well that company branding isn't just important from your product, but if you think of you're going to go out for date night, right? You check out the reviews for where you're going, right? If you're going to book a holiday, you check out the reviews. It's the same sort of imagine that from a commitment perspective of I'm going to go spend the majority of my waking hours somewhere. If you're going to go check out the reviews for just date night, people do the same thing, right? It makes sense in that side. So yeah, interesting.
A lot of it doesn't have to be expensive as well, right?
That was the next piece of it.
Well, exactly.
What are your tips around keeping it?
Oh, well, so you're just talking about reviews. So for anyone that hasn't been on Seek recently, and we haven't because none of us are looking for work, but if you go on Seek, right, they've added reviews for employers. So when people go create a Seek profile, it prompts them to put it. So for everyone listening to this now, if you're MSP, go look up your job ads on Seek and you're going to see a star rating potentially, right? Every job seeker is seeing this star rating for your business. Right. And so it's free though to get your team and your people to go give you reviews that are positive, right? It's free to get your team to go onto Glassdoor and give you positive reviews as well. Dean was just talking about that candidate that couldn't differentiate between 4 different offers, right? Often a big mistake with employer brand is we think it stops when someone's applied for a job, right? All through that hiring experience, you're sending them stuff. So when we make plans, the job offer should come with a video from the CEO. It's pre-recorded, you can do it once, but hey, I just wanted to, extend this opportunity for you. We're really excited. Here's what we're about. I'm so excited that you've got the opportunity to come with us on this journey. You can record that free on an iPhone once and send it with your job offers, and it will improve. So Dean's candidate was given 4 offers and couldn't differentiate, would have taken that for the sake of 30 seconds, right? That you could do once and send over and over. If you've got an L&D policy internally, put a nice logo on the front, right? And send that to everyone, right? If you've got an internal mobility policy about how you promote from within, or if you've got a benefits, people take the benefits brochure and give it to people after they've started, right? Just make it 20% prettier and send it with offers. There's all of that stuff that you can do that costs $0 about just how it's going to be different for them, and start sharing that a lot earlier and share it through. There's a few tech stacks that make this easier as well, but there's also there's dead space between offer accepted and maybe contract signed and started, right? And this is like every recruiter's nightmare, right? Like the candidate that calls 3 days before and is like, sorry, because they've taken something else in that dead time. Like having, and again, it's free to have a process where like the hiring manager catches up with them for a Zoom coffee 2 weeks before they start. Like get them excited, get them warmed up, like send them a picture of their desk, like with the team there smiling, right? Like those human touches make the world of difference. It's like everything I just said was just free, and it will make you stand out more than someone else.
They are some really, really good tips, and I'm making plenty of mental notes myself. So
I'll write that one down. Send a video.
That's a rabbit. So I spoke with someone today was talking to me, and they were talking about, and they like where they're working, and they were talking about how their pay rise was delivered. Yeah. And it was like, so they, and it was their regular like 12-month review or whatever it was, right? But the HR manager brought them in and said thank you and gave them the thing and said, like, this is, it's a pay rise, but it's just a touch of like our gratitude for you. And then the CEO like calls later and says, hey, like, congratulations, we're really, and like how it was delivered, like it wasn't an emailed letter. It was, they sat down and they made a deal about it, and someone called them later and said, congratulations, right? Like EVP isn't 5 days from home. It's those little touches created inside of a business that make the world of difference. Just that, honestly.
So letting them win at ping pong.
Exactly. And look, ping pong's part of it. Like it can be, right? I know we're using it as that, like as a trope, but like if people have fun and spend time together and build relationships and connections in that space, then it is about ping pong tables, but it's about the connection with the humans. Yeah.
So with EVP, and you just made some brilliant points. We often get just busy, business owners, management teams, they're busy. And when we've got a new role, we do incremental improvements. We don't sort of sit back and sort of, particularly with recruitment, go, okay, let's make the perfect process then and there. There's usually got to be bits of pain along the way. Certainly that's speaking from my experience, so it might be different from others on the call. And we certainly haven't got it right. Hence why we'll take some of these little tips and look at implementing them as well. But what do you think, if for those of how much time should people be dedicating to this? Because at the end of the day, there is a lot of noise. Running a business, IT is about solving problems, building solutions to problems, whether it be a printer broken or the client's moving an office, right? We're always focusing on different things. So how much time should we be focusing on it? And when do you think we should be starting?
Really, that's a really tough thing to answer. Depends on the audience. But if I just give in my experience at the start, next to none, because you're transacting and serving your clients. You start to grow a team, and you start, there'll be a realization at one point where you realize your team's more important than your client, because you've got to really look after your teams and your people, and they're looking after your clients. So that was a long time ago. I went through that piece. I'd say, when you're talking about selling earlier, whether you've got marketing and brand, or like the opportunity to sell and sell well is in front of the client. So you get that opportunity to sit in front of them, you explain what you're about and where what the organization's about, and sell unique selling proposition. The same for your team. Like little things like Sean mentioned there. Like we've had candidates that have wanted to meet me because they've got a few options, and then so I've got on a 1 hour call or whatever with them and gone through our VTO and explained all about the KMT and how much do you want to know, and to a point where they're going, no, I've heard enough now, and I'm going to accept the job with you guys. That's happened a few times in the history, but I think start out small. It depends on what. It's really hard to give you an answer saying you start at $2 million revenue or you start at whatever, but just make a difference in the things you can control. In those, when you're interviewing, Sean, great. It's just a great little thing. Like, here's a differentiator. Throw a video in there. Marketing teams would make it really clean and sharp and all structured, and they probably have it all done out of the CRM system, and it's just every candidate gets a full pack. But you can just in the engagement, just stop and think about how I'm interviewing, what I'm articulating to the candidate. Just start with the basics, and it'll grow. When you start to free yourself up and bring other, great people into your organization, they start to help drive those things and challenge it every quarter or whatever. And what do we do next to enhance the experience for the customer, for the staff, for the new clients that are coming in, and same thing for new team members. How do you delight them and keep them there? There's all that stuff. It just gets bigger and bigger as you grow, and more important.
So it is incremental growth in that sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, built overnight.
Nah, don't overthink things. Just start with something and just, and collaborate. Like this is another typical example. I'm sitting here listening to two guys I've never met before, and getting some great ideas. I never thought to sit down and talk to. We've got recruiters, but I never sort of asked them about what other things, what are they seeing. So just learning from people, collaborating, peer groups, whatever it is. So yeah.
Ask what other people are doing.
Everything's a journey. You start somewhere, and you just you've got to just think about evolving, and that's if we don't evolve, we're not growing. So that's probably the point.
So with that in mind, Dean, what are the candidates you find easy to place? What are those organizations doing right?
Well, they're probably two different things. I think the candidates that are easy to place are the ones that know what they want and know where they fit in, and they've got a good level of awareness, and that they're open and honest. And I think from an organisation, in terms of process, I think, and there's a couple of points here. We talk about having a really structured onboarding process and an EVP that ties in with that. There's a lot to be said about employer branding and employee reputation out in the market. With maybe running a recruitment process, the people that aren't successful, if they've had a really good interaction with your business, that could be a really, really powerful marketing tool as well, that people go, look, I missed the role there, but geez, they're a bunch of good guys, and I'll tell you what, if I saw them in the street, I'd stop and say good day. And things like that make such a world of difference in terms of who knows who, because I think it's 2 degrees of separation. Everybody knows somebody, and if your experiences with everybody you interact with, whether they're clients, employees, ex-employees, potential employees, if you do that really well from the get-go, then you're gonna put yourself in a position to have more people that want to work with your business. And I think if you do that, that's something you need to, at all sizes. If you're looking to scale and grow, I think that needs to be something that you're mindful of. And as I said, it all sort of ties in. So as long as you're aware, okay, this is what we do really well, this is what we can do better. If you've had, we talk about when's a good time to look at this sort of thing and EVP and process. If you've gone through a phase where you've lost a heap of staff, then I think you're probably too late. I think you're shutting the gate after the horse is bolted. So I think it's, if you're looking to grow, it might even be a fact of, okay, well, how are we perceived in the market? Ask a recruiter. What's our reputation? Who does this really well? If you want to align yourself with a recruiter that's been around, they'll tell you, because they want to work with you. They're not going to obviously spill, secrets of, sensitive information or anything like that, but they'll say, this company does it really well and this is what they do. And it might be something as simple as a personal phone call, or in a world of videos, the director will jump in a car, drive out to wherever you live an hour away and have a meal with you. And where you go, yeah, well, that sounds like, a bit of effort or a lot, but it means a lot to people. People want to be wanted. And I think that might make the difference between you securing someone you really want to hire or missing out on them, that someone else is prepared to do something that you're not.
Yeah. And I think of it as there's this big, you've got to shift your lens of how you look at this stuff. And I think that the traditional view or perspective that companies always had, right, was that they were a buyer of talent when it came to hiring, right? Like I would go look from people and I'd put up a job ad and I would go pick the person that's right for me. And that hasn't been the reality for 15 years, right? Like you are a seller of opportunities. Yeah. And once that you're thinking it that way, I have to sell the opportunity of working here and I have to sell the opportunity of staying here. Right. Australia's got the lowest unemployment rate that we've had in over 50 years. It's since we've been measuring unemployment, we have the lowest unemployment rate. We have the highest participation rate. We've got the highest number of hours worked. Right. You are not a buyer of talent. You're a seller of opportunities. And once you've got that lens, right, like, that's how we're doing this, I think then it becomes incremental. But that's the lens, right? It's not how do I sell this better? How do I make it people feel like they're growing better? How do I make them feel valued? How do I make them work? Okay, how do I make us more attractive? How do I make that more known? And then how do I make that true when they're coming in through the business? Yeah, so that for me is the big shift. You're a seller of opportunities.
I know. Sorry, Bradley.
Oh no, sorry. I didn't want to just jump in, but one of the things that we've done over the journey, and we didn't realise we were doing it at the start purposely, but we hired junior, not necessarily junior, not an age thing, because we had some of our best operators were coming from different industries at 30, and wanted to get into IT and didn't know how to get in. When we sat down and asked them what they'd done in the past and their background, I was like, you've got a customer service element. We're going to get you in and train you. So a lot of our long-term staff have been with us from joining from non-IT or the first job or those sorts of things, and they've evolved with the company. We've trained them on our ways, and and some of them push themselves with certifications, other things. But that's another part of growing, embedding a culture and finding good talent is start with them. Start with people that want to get into the industry and don't necessarily. We've never gone out and tried to target other organisations and try and get techs. We've never said, oh, you need to have 1 or 2 years as a level one. We just want to find the right attitude, bring them in, and we've even done intakes. Like we haven't done a big intake for a while, but we used to do I think the biggest one we did was 6 at one time. 6. We did a group interviews of 20, 30 people, and we end up picking 6. And attrition, they don't always last, but it might have been 2 or 3 that stuck. That are really good, and they've been with us for a long time. We've got 8 years. One of the guys the other day was 5. Hit his 5 years, and started in junior roles, and their progression's been amazing. Like far beyond what I did when I was in tech. A lot quicker. So that's another factor I think just to think about, as well as finding good junior talent, or people that want to get into the industry and get the right attitude, and then train them, invest them, and they may not stay there forever, but you'll find that some of those will be there for 3 or 5 years, and you'll get lots of ROI, and you set them up for success. If they move on, they move on.
So guys, it's probably more for Dean and Sean, but Brad, feel free to jump in as well. But what resources or tools can our listeners use? Are there resources out there that, rather than having to try and reinvent the wheel, is there somewhere they can?
Yeah, I can sort of feel this. I think this is sort of speaking from personal experience in our organisation. There's companies now that maybe we weren't aware of some time back that now specialise in employee assistance programs, and for us, they're not overly expensive, but the value that's there, it's almost like an insurance policy. People can use it if they want, and I think a lot of it comes down to now, instead of financial things, I mean that's important, especially with sort of cost of living, but there's a lot of things around sort of health and well-being. So we talk about gym memberships, but we're probably talking about more on the mental health side of things. So there's organisations in that EAP space that can offer access to psychologists or psychiatrists. They can do that remotely. They can give you access to financial planners, people, dietitians, all of these sort of things. So if someone that works with you said, oh, look, I really want to go on a weight loss journey, or I want to improve my life, and it's about improving. If people are happy and well balanced, they're going to be better employees, and then better people, and they'll probably get better results as a company, just having these people that have that sort of, not growth mindset, but just people that do want to be balanced and in a really good place. That's when people sort of tend to perform their best. So I think one we use is Benestar, which is BENESTAR. They've been fantastic, and they're if you look into them, they're very reasonably priced, for what you get, and especially businesses that are under sort of 25 or 30 people. I think they're quite good. But just having that to say, well, look, we have this here, and if you need it, it's completely anonymous. We don't need to know. You don't need to go through us. You ring this number, you sort it out. We don't know about it. It's just here. We subscribe to it. So that sort of thing is a really good EAP that we can offer. That our team personally, but I think a lot of businesses will get a lot of value out of that at the moment.
Sean, thoughts?
That's a really good. I was just trying to scribble down a list here, because there's a lot, but it's a lot of it's size dependent, right? Like how small or enterprise you are, because there's almost like a different option for each. And then for me, there's so many different parts of it. I'd say, look, step one, if you were using a hiring platform, some sort of candidate ATS or CRM, I think spending some time on your service flows and automations there is probably one of the most effective and freest things that you should be doing just with a tool that you've already got. I think Dean's suggestion, look at EAP solutions, is great. You can subscribe to them. I think there's another like Officebox, Perkbox. I'm sorry, whoever, I just let down that business, but it's something like that. And you can same thing. You could like EAPs a lot about mental health and assistance. Officebox or Perkbox, you can go people can get discounts and vouchers, and they can give things to others in there and those sorts of things as well. There's platforms around leadership training. Like there's one called Hello Monday that's amazing, where you can just put your leaders on it and they can basically book on-demand coaching sessions with this panel of different leaders, right? So it's this really scalable and surprisingly affordable leadership coaching platform. There's stuff like CultureAmp's pretty enterprise, but if you want enterprise grade analytics, they'll do staff polls, but then they work with, I don't know, over 1 million businesses or 1 million data points. So they can actually predict your employee churn based on the responses to the surveys, because they've got all of the responses from your industry matched to their churn rate. So they will tell you how many people are going to go and when based on this big data approach to employee analytics. There's stuff around, I'll go one more. There's more as this is a category that I would say, but there's a bunch of softwares that basically help your employees share your content. Yeah. So LinkedIn is an engagement algorithm. The more that people engage with a piece of content, the more people it shows it to. There's softwares where basically you can get, your employees download it and they're not sure of what stuff to share on behalf of your business. And you can use that, but for sales, for marketing, and for your employer brand, right? Because you can push to all of your employees, here's something from marketing, here's this thing, here's the blog from Dean about why it's great to work at West, right? And then they can all get in there, get behind it. So you can sort of push a curated feed of content to them. And again, enterprise ones, cheap ones, but yeah, so there's a whole raft, but look, use your CRM better. Use your applicant tracking system better is probably a great place to start. Okay.
Guys, that kind of brings us to time today. I'd like to say a huge thank you. I've certainly taken away a bunch of different ideas from this. I've made a heap of notes. So thank you from my side. Thank you for the audience. As always, this is cut up into a podcast and on YouTube and Vimeo. So to the audience, if you want to refer back to what we've talked about today, make sure you check those out. Very quickly though, I'll just quickly throw up a slide on our next our events page. So check out that. The next MSPs in Conversation hasn't been scheduled yet, but check out our events page for the ones that we've talked about today. Dean, I think you mentioned how to build a great team. The EOS one's up there as well. So check those out. And guys, again, just a huge thank you. Really valuable tips. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so
much.
Pleasure.
Cheers.